Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into an overview of what the book is about, talk about what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. I just reviewed Modern Man in Search of a Soul, so I'll direct you to that video. I'll have a link below to check that out if you want to learn more about Carl Jung. Just very briefly, he was one of the founders of, or is the founder of, analytical psychology. And this book is one of the last things, I believe it is the last thing that he worked on before he passed away in the 1960s. What the book is it's a collection of essays from Jung as well as some close associates of Jung. And they dive into his thoughts at the time regarding dream work, regarding individualization, actualization. So some of those key concepts that you probably heard about in the Modern Man in Search of a Soul book are here again. And it's a collection of essays, and so you have a little bit of a broader reach than the Modern Man in Search of a Soul from these different authors who have kind of their own little specialties. And that's what the book is. Some of the things that I liked, I think Jung's essay in this book probably could be read in place of Modern Man in Search of a Soul, and you get much of the same information. So if I was going to point someone to just one thing, I may point you to this essay that he writes that is basically about maybe a third of the book, that's on kind of dream work, and really, I think, a really good summation of his ideas that you saw in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, but it's a little bit more readable. So if there's one place that I was going to point someone to that may be easiest, the foreword at the beginning of the book talks about how someone had come to Jung and asked him to basically compile this stuff for more of a general audience. And so I didn't get that sense in reading the book that it's much less dense than the other book, but it is a little bit. His thoughts are maybe a little bit more collected, and like that book, Modern Man in Search for a Soul is basically all of Jung's ideas kind of broken down by topic. This is much more the first third of the book. His talks are much more freewheeling. A lot of it deals with how he sees dreams and the importance of dreams, which is a recurring theme in the book. I also, compared to Jung, there's another author whose name is Joseph Henderson, and he kind of talks about the cycle of heroes in different cultures, and I thought that chapter was very, very well written, and I thought his writing was very, very clear. I also liked the last chapter in the book, which is about the last chapter before the closing, which is about examining an individual's dream, kind of the history of his dreams and how those dreams were interpreted by his analyst. That would be, to me, if there's one thing I would point to people who are interested to see what that looks like. I thought that was the best part of the book, frankly. The rest of it, I think, is either stuff I've read other times before or not particularly as useful. Some of it, kind of the cons, there's a section on art, kind of modern art, and how some of the ideas of the unconscious are kind of starting to, again, this was written in the 60s, are starting to kind of come to the forefront in the different art movements of the I guess, early to mid 20th century. And then M.L. von Franz, whose name I'm sure I butchered. Let me make sure I have her correct name here. M.L. von Franz has a pretty lengthy chapter on the process of individuation. I found that to be, her writing to be pretty confusing. I'll be honest with you. I understand kind of some of the concepts, but from a practical standpoint, it was hard to really follow what she was saying. And that was one of the weaker chapters for me. There's also, in Jung's chapter at the beginning, he makes a distinction between signs and symbols. And that was also a situation where I've read other things on the difference between signs and symbols, and I understand, I believe the distinction has to do with, if you can understand that something stands in place for something else, then it is a sign. If the meaning is more ambiguous, then it is a symbol, I think is the truth. But in reading this, when he brings that concept up, he goes over it very quickly, and he kind of elides over it, and it wasn't quite clear exactly the significance of that or why he made that distinction between signs and symbols. There's also a part where she's talking about, Emil von Franz, I believe, is talking about individuation, and she uses the term something clicks, and that's not really I believe I could conjecture what she means by clicks, but that also wasn't quite clear. So that would be, and I know that she has gone on to write more about Jungian analysis as it applies to fairy tales, and I may check that out in the future because that's pretty interesting to me. But her chapter and the chapter on art were to me the two weakest, and would be the ones I'd probably recommend. You know, if you're going to read over parts of this and skip other parts, those were less of value to me personally. Um, and I think the last chapter is, I think, the strongest chapter. The Young's chapter, if you've read Modern Man's Search for Soul, I don't know how much new is there. A lot of it feels like his previous books, but maybe just synthesized or summarized a little bit cleaner. So if you've read that already, it's a lot of the same information. It didn't seem like there's a lot of evolution in the 30 years that I picked on, at least reading it just the one time. There's other people. If you are a Jungian yourself and there's a lot of change between the initial book, Modern Man's Search for Soul, and this, Man and His Symbols, please let me know below because I don't want to. I would like to be corrected if that's wrong. But it seems like there seem to be not a lot of difference between that first book and this book in terms of his thinking on many of his ideas. The concept of synchronicity, I think, comes up in this book a little bit more often than I think it did in Modern Man: Search of a Soul. That would, I guess, overall, I don't know if I would recommend someone to start here. I would probably still have them start in, if you're wanting to get the total full understanding of the Jungian thought, I would still probably point you to Modern Man: Search of a Soul. If you're someone who is in a time crunch and could only read one section of anything that Jung ever wrote, I would probably point you to the beginning of this because I think his first essay in this, which is entitled Approaching the Unconscious, I think gives you a pretty clear explanation of what he means when he says unconscious and what the importance of dreams are and how those work as part of the therapeutic process, and everything else after that kind of builds on those ideas. I still, if you're going to read a full book length, I probably still would start you with Modern Man's Search of a Soul because I think that does a better job of basic ideas building upon on top of each other to get the full scope of what Jung was talking about and things that he was interested in. This book is as much about other associates working on his ideas than it is him. I also would really recommend the last. I want to give credit to the author of the last chapter because I thought that was really quite good. I'm going to butcher the name, but I think it's Jolanda Jacobi, Symbols in Individual Analysis. I thought that was a highlight as well. So if you're first coming into this, I guess what I would say is either read this first chapter or Modern Man's Search for Soul if you're trying to get just a basic foundation. If you're trying to go look at it from a therapeutical process of what an individual analysis would look like in terms of dream analysis, then I would recommend the last chapter in this book. I thought that was very strong. And as I said before, in terms of the second chapter was also, as far as the writing itself, was quite strong. I'm going to stay for next time on Jung and read Jung in Film, which is a collection of essays about analysis on modern film. This came out, I think, in 2001. There's a sequel to this that I do not have, unfortunately, but this was written in 2001 and has analysis on such things as Pulp Fiction, as well as Field of Dreams and others. 2001, Dark City, Blade Runner. So a lot of things that I've read or seen that I'm interested in. So it'll be interesting to see how the Jungian approach can be applied to film in film studies. So until next time, if you've enjoyed this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll leave below the link to my review for Modern Man: Search of a Soul. If there's anything else that you would recommend in this kind of vein, please feel free to leave suggestions below. Until next time, bye.